All right, so this is my Week 11 NFL Power Rankings. For this week, we're going to be talking a lot about what every team can do to make the playoffs. Some every team is still mathematically alive, although obviously some teams, are basically dead for the season. But mathematically, every team is alive. So we're going to talk about, what they need to do in order to make the playoffs. I got the Giants here at 32. They're 2-8. Just got destroyed by the Cowboys. They let up 640 total yards in that game. Got outgained by nearly 500 yards. Tommy DeVito threw for 86 yards. They obviously played a really bad game. But for the Giants, they're not going to win their division. They're probably not making the playoffs, obviously, at all because their team's just not good. But if they did win out the rest of the season, they could squeeze into that seventh wild card spot. So, they would have to win. They would probably have to win out the entire season to get into the seventh seed. Now we got the Panthers at 31. So they lost to the Bears this week, 16-13 on Thursday Night Football. Bryce Young threw for 185 yards, no touchdowns and no picks. Their whole team had only 43 rushing yards. So their offense just did not play very good. And again, for the Panthers, they're going to, have to win out if they want to have a chance of making the playoffs. They got to get to 9-8 and probably, to probably have a chance for that wild card spot, or potentially for their division. 9-8 could actually win the division. So, Panthers have a better shot than the Giants for sure because 9-8 could very well win the Panthers division, while the Giants would have to be hoping for the last wild card spot at 9-8. At number 30, we got the Patriots. They're 2-8. They lost 10-6 versus the Colts. It wasn't a blowout game, but their offense looked horrible. Mac Jones threw for 170 yards with one pick. That pick, of course, coming on the second to last drive for them, and then they ended up benching Mac Jones after he threw that horrible interception. For their last drive, with 2 minutes left in the game, they benched Mac Jones for Bailey Zappi, and then Bailey Zappi proceeded to throw an interception on that drive as well. So the Patriots just not a good team and don't have a good quarterback. They're going to have to win out if they want any chance at getting that seventh wild card spot at 9-8. But even then, I don't know if 9-8 is even going to get you at a wild card spot for the AFC because you got like 10 teams right now that are 500 or better. So it's going to be very difficult for you to make the playoffs with 9 wins. You got the Chicago Bears at 29. They beat the Panthers this week. So they got 3 wins on the season now. They played decent. They won 16-13. They were still with Tyson Bagent, and I believe Justin Fields is supposed to be back for this week. So that should definitely help them going forward as well. I just don't think they're going to be that much improved either way. But, for the Bears, they could probably afford to lose one more game in the rest of the season and potentially still get in that wild card spot. The division isn't going to happen because Detroit is going to lock up more than 9 to 10 wins. But for the Bears, very easily could. I mean, not easily, but I'm saying it's very. So it's definitely a possibility, like maybe like a 0.1% chance, but it's not completely out of the picture for them to go 6-1 the rest of the season. Definitely not likely, but if they somehow manage to go 6-1 the rest of the season, they could probably squeeze into the 7th seed wildcard spot. For the Packers, they lost again this week. They're now 3-6. They lost to the Steelers only by 4 points, so not a bad game for them. Jordan Love didn't play that bad. He had 289 yards, which is a season high. 2 touchdowns, but then also 2 interceptions. So, he definitely had a decent game, almost 300 yards with 2 touchdowns, but you can't have those interceptions. For the Packers, they're in basically the same situation as the Bears, but they only have 6 losses right now. So they could afford to lose probably about 2 more games this season, go 6-2 to finish the year. So if they somehow miraculously had a strong stretch in the season and go 6-2, they could potentially get that got the wild card spot as well. For the Arizona Cardinals, they had Kyler Murray back this week, and they actually did win against the Atlanta Falcons on a game-winning field goal, which definitely was a common theme this week. I believe we had 5 separate game-winning field goals, which was the most in a single week. Might have been 6, actually. I'm not completely sure. But yeah, they beat the Falcons by 2 points. They signed running back Michael Carter, who was cut this week. So maybe that should help the running back depth too a little bit, because I think he's a pretty solid player. But yeah, they definitely looked good under Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray threw for almost 250 yards. 0 touchdowns and 1 pick, but like it just first came back in almost over a year, coming off an ACL injury, I believe. So like you don't expect him to just go out there and be amazing, but he did play really, really solid. They're going to have to win out to have a chance at making the playoffs, which is obviously unlikely, but the way they played with Kyler Murray in their first game definitely shows a lot of improvement over how they've been so far this season. Number 26 is the Tennessee Titans. They dropped in 5 spots this week after they lost 20-6 versus the Buccaneers. I thought they could have won that game going into it, but they just did not show up to play. Will Levis had 199 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 pick. So, less than 200 yards with no touchdowns. Not a great game for him. Also, Chase Campbell, linebacker, he's on the IR now. That's going to hurt the defense a little bit. And they also cut Taylor Stallworth, who I thought was a decent defensive lineman there, but they did end up cutting him for, I don't know the reasoning there, but, he wasn't playing a whole lot, but I thought he was still a decent option. And for the Titans, they're probably not going to be able to win their division because Jacksonville already has 6 wins. So unless Jacksonville just has a collapse at the last half of the season, and the other teams in the division don't have a great end of the season, the Titans could get to like 10 wins, which is basically going to have to win out. But they potentially could get up to 10 wins and win the division, but likely going to have to settle for maybe going 9-8 and hopefully squeezing through that 7th wild card spot. But again, I don't think 9 wins is going to get you the wild card spot anyway, so they might have to get 10 wins regardless of if it's going to win the division or not. Number 25 is the Los Angeles Rams. They had a bye this week, so I don't got too much to say about them. But yeah, they're going to probably have to, they've got 8 games left. They're going to have to go at least 6-2 in those games for a chance at that wild card spot, because they're not winning their division. Seattle and San Francisco are definitely going to be ahead of them there. So they're going to have to hope that they have an insane finish to this season if they want any chance of making the playoffs. Number 24 is the Atlanta Falcons. They didn't play great this week. They lost to the Cardinals by 2 points. Not a horrible week, but you would have liked them to pull out a win there. Unfortunately, they were not able to do so. Taylor Heinicke did get injured in that game, and they replaced him with Desmond Ridder, who I think is worse than Heinicke. Desmond Ridder only threw 6 passes in that game. Taylor Heinicke only threw for 51 yards in that game. So they only had 90 total passing yards. Like, you got to pass the ball more than that. Bijan Robinson did play good today, so, their running game is working, but you got to be able to pass for more than 90 yards if you want to win a game anyways. But yeah, for the Falcons, I do think they definitely have a chance of winning the division. They're only 1 game behind the New Orleans Saints, and they still have a game against the Saints later this season. I believe they might still have both their games against the Saints. So they definitely have a very realistic chance of winning their division this year. They just got to win. They got to win their division games left this season, which is definitely a pretty real possibility. So they have a real chance to go about 9-8 and win their division. 8-9 might even be able to win their division as long as they win their divisional games. So they actually have a realistic chance to make the playoffs here. Number 23, got the Washington Commanders. They lost to the Seattle Seahawks by 3 points this week. Sam Howell played really well with 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brian Robinson had 150 yards and touchdowns. They did really, really good on offense there, but their defense was not able to hold off the Seahawks. And for them to make the playoffs, They gotta go about 5-2 the rest of the season, which you know isn't impossible, but it's definitely unlikely for them. So I don't foresee them unless they have a drastic improvement in the season. I don't see them making any sort of playoff noise. Number 22 is the Jets. They dropped 2 spots this week after they did end up losing this week to the Raiders. They really needed to get that win versus the Raiders to put them at 5-4 instead of 4-5. They definitely still have a playoff chance, but they're going to need to do really good towards the end of the year, especially in their divisional games because they got Buffalo still. They got some tough games on their schedule. They got to play Buffalo, Miami twice actually. They got to play the Browns and the Texans. So they got a couple of tough games. They got to be able to win those games if they want a chance of making the playoffs. But especially if Aaron Rodgers does come back towards the latter half of this season, like week 15 or 16, I think is what they were speculating. If that does happen, if they're about 7 and 8 wins towards come that time, then that's a real possibility for them to get to that 9 to 10 wins that they're going to need to make the playoffs. Number 21 got the Raiders. So they had a good win this week versus the Jets to push them up to 5-5, which is much better than what I thought this team was going to be at this point in the season. So 5-5, they got as long as they're playing like they have the last couple of weeks, they're 2-0 without Josh McDaniels. So that's obviously looking good for them. If they can continue that, it's going to be very difficult for them considering their schedule because the Raiders don't have a nice schedule. They got to play Miami, Kansas City twice, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Colts, and the Vikings. So, yeah, not a very easy schedule for them, but if they're somehow able to pull off 5 wins there, which just seems highly unlikely, but currently undefeated without Josh McDaniels. So, if they can stay that way, then they could potentially see themselves with 10 wins at that seventh wild card spot. Number 20 got the Buccaneers. They had a good game this week against the Titans, 20-6. So good win there. They're definitely in the race with their division as well. Saints are at 5-5. They're at 4-5. So, all they got to do is win their divisional games to end the season. They have a real possibility. They do got to play the Niners next week, which is going to be a little bit of a struggle. But they also, do got the Panthers twice, which should be a couple free wins there. They got the Saints and the Falcons once, which they're going to need to win both of those games to have a chance of making that or winning that division because, if they lose to one of those teams, the other teams will likely be ahead of them in their division. But as long as they can win their division games, they have a real possibility to win that division. Number 19 is the Saints here, which are going to have the exact same thing I just talked about. But the Saints this week, they lost to the Vikings by 8. Josh Dobbs played really good. Saints did not play really great. But yeah, like I just said, they're going to have to win their divisional games. They currently have the lead in the division, so that's definitely a plus for them. But they're going to have to win those remaining divisional games if they want a chance at keeping that division. Because I don't think, they could potentially go 9-8 and not win the division, and then still be the seventh wild card seed. But likely 9-8 will be the lead in that division. So we'll see what happens there. Number 18, you got the Indianapolis Colts. They're 5-5 now, so that's good for them. They beat the Patriots this week, 10-6. So not a pretty win, but it's a win nonetheless. So that's something. They're going to have to go 5-2 in the next 7 games to have a chance probably to make the playoffs, which isn't impossible. They got games against like the Bucks, the Titans, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Texans. So not the easiest schedule, but if they can pull out 5 wins there, they should be able to make the playoffs. Number 17 is the Broncos. They've been playing really good as of late, beating the Chiefs and Bills in the last couple of games. They're now 4-5. They're going to have a tough schedule ahead of them still. They got to go 6-2 probably in their next games to win, to make the playoffs, which is going to be very unlikely. They got to play the Vikings, the Browns, the Texans, the Chargers, the Lions, Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders. So I mean, they got three divisional games left. They're all winnable for sure. Patriots should be a win, so they're going to have to capitalize on easier games like Minnesota and Cleveland the next couple weeks. Cleveland, of course, without Deshaun Watson. So if the Broncos can capitalize on the Browns without Deshaun, get a win this week versus Minnesota, and then win those divisional games, they'll be right in position to be able to make the playoffs potentially. Number 16, we got the Minnesota Vikings, who currently 6-4. Did not expect them to be this good right now. They could potentially win their division. Lions are looking really good right now, so it seems unlikely that they could dethrone them for the division. But 10 wins does not seem unlikely for the Vikings at this point in the season. They just got to go 4-3 to finish the year, and they probably only need 9 wins to make the playoffs. So if they can win 3 out of the next 7 games, they could easily slide into that 9 seed. Which they have games against the Broncos, against the Bears, you know, they should, and against the Raiders and against like the Packers. Those should be 4 wins right there. Uh, you know, Broncos, Bears, Raiders, Packers. So they can get 4 wins there, or even 3 wins there. They don't even have to beat the good teams like the Bengals, Lions, and Lions again. So, and if they were able to steal one of the 2 wins against the Lions, they should easily be able to make the playoffs this season, which is kind of crazy. But that's where we're at right. Number 15 is the Bills. They did not look good this week. They have not looked good for a couple weeks in a row, actually. But I mean, they're still a Bills, so we still feel like they should be able to make the playoffs. But right now, their division still have a chance to win that division. But I would pick Miami right now if I was a betting man. So they still do have one game against Miami, which is going to be in Week 18. So it might come down to that game for the division crown. But for Buffalo, they're going to likely need to get 10 wins anyways, which does not seem very likely right now. They got to play the Jets, who they lost to earlier. Then they got to play the Eagles, Chiefs, and Cowboys. Then the Chargers, Patriots, and Dolphins. So, if we get them 3 wins against the Jets, Chargers, and Patriots, which isn't even guaranteed considering they lost to the Jets and Patriots earlier, and the Chargers aren't bad. But if you give them those 3 wins, which those are the 3 easiest games right now, they still got to win probably 2 games against Kansas City, Dallas, Miami, and Philadelphia, which the way they're playing so far does not look like they're going to be able to win 2 of those games. So I'm not sure right now. I even think the Bills are going to be able to make the playoffs right now. It's kind of weird to say. Number 14 is the Browns. They got a good win this week over the Ravens, but now Deshaun Watson's injured for the season, so that's obviously gonna, put a wrench in their playoff hopes. But it's definitely not, um, completely impossible considering they are 6-3. They only got to go probably 4-3 the rest of the season, and they could definitely win that division as well. Because they do have one game left against the Ravens, I think, right? Let's look at the schedule. Hmm. No, I think they have played both their games against the Ravens. So, they just got to hope the Ravens plays a couple of games if they want to be able to win the division. But all they got to do is win 4 more games this season, and they should be able to win that division. So they got games against Pittsburgh, Denver, the Los Angeles Rams, Jags, Bears, Texans, Jets, and Bengals. So for easy wins there, you should get a win. You would think over Denver and Chicago for sure, and then the Jets should potentially be a win, and the Rams should potentially be a pretty easy win there. So those are 4 wins right there. So maybe if they can get those wins out, which is definitely a real possibility, they could be able to make the playoffs with Brian Thompson Robinson as a quarterback right now. Number 13 is the Chargers. They're gonna have a tough time making the playoffs because they're gonna have to go 6-2 probably to finish the season, but not impossible. They did lose to the Lions this week. Really needed that win if they wanted to have a chance of making the playoffs. But they definitely have a fairly easy schedule right now because they got the Bears, Packers, Saints, and um, who else do they got? Hold up. No, that's not their. Sorry, that's not their schedule. They got the Packers, Ravens, Patriots, and Broncos coming up in the next 4 games, so you would think they beat the Patriots and Packers at least. Then they really need to get their division wins against Denver, Las Vegas, and Denver again, which will be 5 wins right there. So if they can come out on top against Denver twice, Las Vegas, New England, Green Bay, then they can afford to lose to teams like Buffalo, Kansas City, and Baltimore. Still potentially make the playoffs, but they're likely going to need a win versus either Baltimore, Buffalo, or Kansas City to still have a chance at that 7th seed. So it's not looking good for them right now. Number 12 is the Steelers. They're 6-3 right now. Got a win versus the Packers this week. Quan Alexander is on the IR, which is a little bit upsetting because he's been a decent part of their defense right now. But they do definitely have a real chance of winning their division and making the playoffs. So if they can get 4 wins this rest of the season, they should be playoff lock, which doesn't seem too difficult. They should have at least 2 free wins against the Cardinals and Patriots, you would assume. And then they got 4 divisional games left. They got Cleveland, Cincinnati twice, and Baltimore. So if they can at least find a way to beat Cleveland this week without Deshaun Watson, and then split with Cincinnati, then they could, that's 10 wins right there, and they should easily be in the playoffs. Number 11 is Seattle Seahawks. They're 6-3. They could win the division. I believe they're tied with the Niners right now, I think, for the lead of the division. Not 100% sure there, but they're definitely close right there. So the Seahawks could win the division. I'm likely seeing 49ers to win that division, but it's definitely a possibility for Seattle to still be able to pull that division out. They're going to need to beat San Francisco because they do play them twice the rest of the season. So they're going to need to win at least one of those games to win that division. But they only need 3 wins probably to win or to make the playoffs, which they should easily get against teams like Tennessee, Arizona, and the Rams. So, they should have no trouble making the playoffs and potentially win the division as long as they can beat 49ers in at least one of their 2 matchups. Number 10 is the Houston Texans, so they've looked really good as of late. CJ Stroud looking like top 10, potentially even top 5 quarterback in the league right now. So he's looking really, really well. Like I said, they beat the Bengals by 3 this week, which is really good. CJ Stroud played amazing. For the Texans to make the playoffs, I don't see them winning the division because I think Jacksonville's still the favorites, but they definitely have a chance to take over Jacksonville if they lose a few more games this season. But I'd be hoping for the seven wild card seed for the Texans right now, which is definitely a possibility. Got to win probably 5 games in the rest of the season. With games against like Arizona, Denver, the Jets, the Titans twice. That should be 5 wins right there. And a game against Cleveland could definitely be a win, because they don't have Deshaun Watson. So, they're only a couple of difficult games. I feel like Jacksonville, Denver, and Cleveland could be a difficult game. And, Tennessee's a divisional game, so those could be difficult. But as long as they can pull out their divisional wins and get the easy wins against teams like the Jets, which, not a bad team, so it might not be a completely easy win, but those are games they should be favorited in. It's like Denver, Jets, and Arizona. So as long as they can get those wins, they should be able to make the playoffs at about 10-7. Oh shoot! What the freak? Okay, well I guess I don't know exactly what just happened there, but we're just gonna try to skip through this really fast. I know you're gonna see all of the teams right here, but it's okay. We're gonna get to them anyways. Sorry about that. 9 Jacksonville Jaguars. So. They're 6-3. They should be able to win their division pretty easily. They lost to the Niners by a lot this week, so that's kind of sad to see. But they should still have no problem winning the division. They got to beat Houston in their game against them to have a an easier chance. They got Tennessee twice, Carolina, Tampa Bay. So there should be some easy wins there. As long as they get the 10 wins, I think they should be able to win that division if they get that win versus Houston. So I don't see them having too much issues. Number 8 is Cincinnati. They're a pretty solid team. Did lose this week, which was kind of disappointing. Yeah, they lost to the Texans by 3 this week. They're supposed to be without T. Higgins again this week, so not great for their offense, but they should have no trouble making the playoffs. They should win their division. I mean, not actually. Never mind. Backtrack. The division's tough because Baltimore is the lead right now. They're going to have to win a lot of games to win that division. It's definitely not out of the realm of possibility, um, but right now it's definitely not looking great for them. I actually did mess this up. They're not 6-3. They're 5-4. I think we all know that. I just accidentally messed it up a little bit. So that's my bad. But 5-4. They got a tough schedule ahead of them. They got Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Minnesota, Pittsburgh again, Kansas City, and Cleveland. So they have none. All their games left are against teams that are 500 or better. So not a great schedule for them, but I do feel like they should be able to get to 10 wins and get a wild card spot. Division is going to be tough, but 10 wins is definitely a possibility. It's going to be difficult, but I feel like they can pull it off for sure. Number 7 is Baltimore Ravens. They are 7-3, so they're playing pretty good mostly, but they did lose to the Browns this week. It was kind of embarrassing because I believe they were up by 14 points in the fourth quarter, and then got outscored 16-0 after that. So not great. Lamar Jackson threw 2 picks in this game, so not great for them. But the Ravens should have no trouble making the playoffs. They should be able to win the division, but they don't have a very easy schedule either. They got games against Cincinnati, the Chargers, the Rams, the Jags, Niners, Dolphins, and Steelers. So, Chargers and Rams right now look like they should be wins for them, but Chargers could definitely pull up an upset there. And then we got some tough games outside of the division still with Jacksonville, San Francisco, and Miami, and then a couple more divisional games, which are obviously going to be tough given their division right now. But 10 wins should be fairly easy. So playoffs should be a lock. Division, maybe not. Number 6 is the Niners. They are 6-3 right now. Now they're playing pretty solid. They just, they had a couple bad games before their bye, and they come out of the bye and destroy the Jaguars 34-3. And we usually do see the Niners come out of their bye week with a late season push and just looking absolutely dominant, which is, so far as what we've seen through one game. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. They forced 4 turnovers this week while having 0 turnovers on offense. So played really, really good. Christian McCaffrey's touchdown streak did end, which is kind of sad. But, they did what they could. They gave him the ball like 4 times in a row towards the end of the game, and they still couldn't get him in the end zone, so it's all right. But for the Niners, it's between them and Seattle for the division. I do think the Niners will take it. It's definitely going to be a toss-up. It's going to come down to their games against each other. I believe they have one left, or actually, no, they have 2 games left against the Seahawks. So, if they can beat them both times, they should have the division on lock. If they can beat them one time, that I'm still feeling pretty good about them winning the division. Both teams will probably have 10, 11 wins. I feel like the Niners should be able to win that division, and the playoffs is definitely a lock for them. As long as they win like 3 games to end the season, they'll probably be in the playoffs. Number 5 is the Detroit Lions, so they're 7-2. They're doing really, really good. They're up on the Minnesota Vikings, who are 6-4 in the division. So that's their divisional threat, but I don't think that's really much of a threat. I feel like the Lions should be able to win that division fairly easily, especially considering their schedule. They do have a lot of divisional games left. They actually have 5 divisional games left. So basically every single one is still left. They got 2 against Chicago, 2 against Green Bay. Wait, hold up. No, 2 against Minnesota, 2 against Chicago, and 1 against Green Bay. So they're going to have to beat Minnesota at least one of those 2 times to win the division, probably because Minnesota wins both of those games. Those are going to be real big momentum swings for them. But I feel like the Lions should be able to go at least 4-1 in those division games, which is already 11 wins. So it's easily divisional lock there, I would say. So number 1 seed in the NFC is completely out of the question because, like I said, they have 5 divisional games left, which very easily could be 5 straight wins there. And they got teams against the Saints, The Broncos and the Cowboys. So Cowboys might be a loss, so that's going to be a tough game. But like they should be able to beat the Saints and Broncos. They could go 5-0 in division, and then they got a tough game against Dallas. Even if they lose against Dallas, they could, very realistically go 14-3 this season, which potentially could be a one seed. Considering how depending how other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, for instance, shake out the rest of their season, but number one seed isn't a complete, isn't like completely out of the question for the Detroit Lions this year. Number six or four, I'm sorry, they are 6-3. Number four is the Dallas Cowboys. So they, like I said, they're gonna have a difficult time winning their division because Eagles have a 2-game lead on them right now, and they have the current head-to-head. I believe they have another matchup at some point, but I'm not sure if that matchup is gonna matter too much because I feel like the Eagles, should be able to win the rest of their games. Like, their other games against other teams, the Eagles should be able to win more of those than the Cowboys will. Cowboys have some difficult games with Buffalo and Miami and Detroit on their schedule, and Seattle for that matter. But they do got some easy games against Washington, Carolina, and Washington. So they should at least win three more games to secure a playoff berth there. And they do got like four tough games, but I feel like they could win a couple of those games. Number three is the Miami Dolphins. They're doing pretty solid this season. They got number one seed in their division coming off a bye week this week. Hopefully they can move after their loss against Kansas City. I think they will be able to do pretty solid the rest of the season, but they don't have the easiest schedule either. Um, they got some tough games. They got the Raiders and Jets coming up, followed by the Commanders, the Titans, and the Jets again. So those seem like pretty easy games there. But I feel like they'll probably split with the Jets. They'll probably find a way to split with the Jets. They should be able to beat the Raiders, Commanders, and Titans. So right there would put them at 10-4. But then their last three games of the season are going to come against Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo. So they could easily be 10-4 going into week 16. But then they got three really tough games. So if they managed to lose all three of those games, that potentially could knock them out of the division and put a team like Buffalo ahead of them. That could potentially knock them out of the playoffs completely, depending how their other games go the rest of the season. So they really need to take care of business over the next 6 weeks and win at least five of those games, because then they're going to get it with some real challenges in the last 3 weeks. Number two is the Kansas City Chiefs at 7-2. Their division should be basically a lock. They got a pretty significant lead on the Raiders at number two in the division, who are 5-5. So I don't foresee them throwing away the division somehow. But the number one seed in the AFC is what they're looking for. Right now, they're fighting with the Ravens, but I feel like the Ravens are going to be beaten up by the division a little bit. And same thing probably with the Dolphins. I just talked about them. They're probably not going to be able to win that division with their tough schedule coming up towards the end of that season. But for the Chiefs, they don't have the easiest schedule either. I mean, they have a few tough games against the Eagles, the Bills, and the Bengals. But they should be able to win their other games against the Packers, Patriots, Raiders, and Chargers. So if they can win those games at 11-2, and they got three tough games against the Eagles, Bills, and Bengals. But, as long as they can manage to win one of those games, they could potentially be a one seed at 12-5, because the Ravens are currently have three losses and definitely could get two more losses just in the division alone. The Dolphins currently have three losses, and I just talked about they have three tough games. So it's going to be difficult for those teams to get the 12 wins. So the Chiefs could have have 12 wins and be the one seed. Well, in the NFC, you're going to look at teams, let me just talk about that next here. You got the Eagles at number one. And, I feel like, Eagles are going to definitely get over 12 wins, and the Cowboys, who are in the division as well, might get 12 wins. A team like the Niners could get 12 wins. A team like the Lions could get 12 wins. So you definitely could have multiple teams in the NFC with 12 wins this season. And then, you could have potentially a wild card team, and the Dallas Cowboys have 12 wins. And then you got the Chiefs have 12 wins to be the number one seed. So I feel like That seems kind of backwards because you would think the AFC is better than the NFC because that's just what you think of because you think of teams like the Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Chargers, Ravens. Those are really good teams. Then you even got teams like the Jags, Texans, Browns, and Steelers who are doing really good right now. So you got a lot of teams in the AFC. But that's kind of why the AFC teams aren't going to have as good a record is because, the AFC is so stacked, they got to beat up on each other a little bit. So even though the AFC teams will probably have worse records than the NFC teams, doesn't mean they're worse teams. They just have a harder schedule because you got a team like the Lions who have a fairly easy division, so that's why they're going to probably get over 12 wins. A team like the Cowboys and Eagles, they got an easy division outside of each other, so they probably get at least 4 free wins in that division. So that's why they're going to probably have significantly better records. And a team like the Bills, Dolphins, Bengals, Ravens, who you think are really good teams, where they just have a lot tougher divisions as well. So that's why they're not going to be able to win 12 plus games because they're going to get 3 losses in the division. So, yeah. Our game picks here, we got the Bengals over the Ravens. The first time to say I did really bad last week. I did 5-9 last week. It was really, really not a good week for me. But my overall record is still about 70%. It's over 67%, so that's pretty good. I would say at 101 and 49. So I'm not too upset about that. My lock and upset of the week did miss. 10-2 on lock of the week and 7-3 on upset of the week. So, definitely worse than last week because I missed both of those, but it's still pretty solid, I would say, overall. But yeah, my Bengals picks for this week: Bengals over Ravens as my upset of the week. I'm not sure why they're such an upset. They're at like 160. I feel like the line should have been a little bit closer, but they are without T. Higgins. But the Ravens are without a few players as well, and Marlon Humphrey and Ronnie Stanley and potentially some other guys as well. So I feel like the line should have been closer, but I will take the Bengals in that game. I'll take the Texans over the Cardinals. That shouldn't be too difficult of a game there. I'll take the Commanders over Giants as my lock of the week. Giants just really, really suck. So I feel like the Commanders, who aren't a great team, but they're definitely significantly better than the Giants right now, so they should easily win that game, I would say. Yeah, the Cowboys over the Panthers. That shouldn't be a tough game. Lions over Bears should be easy. Dolphins over Raiders should be easy. Steelers over Browns could be close, but Browns without Deshaun Watson. I trust Pittsburgh over them there. Jags over Titans should be able to win that game fairly easily. Hopefully they bounce back after their horrific performance from last week. The Chargers over the Packers. I mean, Chargers really need to win here. If the Chargers lose this week, their playoff hopes are basically out of the window. So they really need to get a win here, and I feel like they will find a way to do it. I know it would be very Chargers-like to lose this game, but I feel like they'll find a way to win. The Niners over the Bucks, that shouldn't be too hard. The Bills over the Jets. I know they lost to the Jets last time, but if the Bills lose to the Jets again this week after just losing to the Broncos last week, they might as well just retire from the NFL. Yeah. Seahawks over Rams, I don't think it'll be too big of an issue for them to win that game. Rams aren't, struggle to stay healthy. Matthew Stafford should be back in this game, but you never know exactly how healthy he's going to be in his first game back. I got the Vikings over the Broncos. That should be a very fun game. Josh Dobbs against Russell Wilson. The Broncos looked really good the last 2 weeks, but Josh Dobbs, is Josh Dobbs. So I'm not sure if they can get past him, bro. He should be an MVP candidate right now. Like, honestly, I'm not sure if the Broncos are going to be able to get past Josh Dobbs and the Vikings, which is a wild sentence to say, but that is what it is. And I got the Chiefs over Eagles. That should be, one of the best games of the season so far. Super Bowl rematch, of course. I do got the Chiefs edging them out in that one. It will be a very close game. Could go either way, but I got to pick a team, and I'm going to go with Kansas City. Don't really have a big, strong reason other than I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so that's basically my reason there. But yeah, that's what we got. So thank you for watching. Make sure to come back next week for the updated